Good evening and welcome to the 15th episode of Nature Speaks, brought to you by Himalayan Nature. We have with us Dr. Tulsi Subedi sir, Director of Himalayan Nature, for technical support, and I'm Aditi, your moderator for the session. Each week, we have been doing these sessions to explore different aspects of nature from experts across different countries. And today, as you all know, we are gathered to talk about elephants. As we all know, elephants are a conservation priority species of Nepal. They are characterized as an endangered species in the IUCN Red List and are a protected species in Nepal. These large mammals are often found moving outside from the forest areas and entering into the farmlands, causing enormous damage to life and property for human living nearby. In order to safeguard the threatening population of elephants, people's lives, and property, it is hence important to adopt human-elephant coexistence techniques that can benefit both elephants and humans. So in order to talk about such long-term human-elephant coexisting techniques, we have Mr. Ashok Ram sir with us. Ashok Ram sir is a conservation officer in Chitwan National Park with the experience of almost 20 years in the field of conservation. Currently deputed in Chitwan National Park, he has previously worked in 8 different protected areas of Nepal. He is currently pursuing his PhD on Asian elephants at Wildlife Institute of India, Dehradun, on landscape level modeling of Asian elephants, habitat population, and interaction with humans in Nepal. So Ashok Ram sir, welcome to the Nature Speaks program.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Okay.
Okay, I'll just make a quick announcement before we let Ashok sir start with his presentation. I'd like to let everyone be informed that this session is being recorded and we are also streaming live in Himalayan Nature's Facebook page. If you have any questions regarding the presentation, please use the chat option, which will be opened shortly before the presentation ends. Our speaker will try to answer as many of your questions as time allows. And now, Ashok sir, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all participated here, my guru, my professor, my colleagues, and all other participants. Thank you very much to Himalayan Nature and my chief audience. I think also I have seen some chief audience sir and ecologist sir. So now I would like to share my screen. So Aditi, did you see me?
Yeah, it's working.
Yeah, so shall I start now?
Yes, please.
Thank you very much, Aditi. So respected guests, my guru, my chief audience, and from ecologist sir, my seniors, my professors, and my supervisors. Similarly respected him sir, Tulsi sir, and Himalayan Nature team. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Hem, Dr. Tulsi, and Himalayan Nature team to provide me an ample opportunity to present my idea on elephant ecology here in Nature Speak platform. And my topic here today is human-elephant coexistence in Nepal, which is also a part of my PhD. Though my PhD study topic is landscape level modeling of Asian elephant habitat, its population, and its interaction with human in Nepal. So again, I would like to thank my supervisor and co-supervisor, Dr. Bivas Pandav, Dr. Samrat, Dr. Narendra, Dr. Naresh, Dr. Hem, and my seniors from Department of National Park and Wildlife Conservation, along with my supporters and doing the fund support from Rapport Small Grant, ZSL, International Elephant Foundation, WWF, NTNC, and finally Department of National Park and Wildlife Conservation, from where I get permit to study this elephant project from Wildlife Institute of India. So I'm very thankful to my department, my Director General, who has previously also supported and now also supported me, and my Chief Warden from Parsa and Chittagong, and all the Chief Wardens from the lowland protected area who have supported me to carry out my PhD study, even in the field and field work also. So before now this is time to enter into subject matter, and before entering into the subject, that is human-elephant conflict coexistence in Nepal, for today's topic, I want to describe briefly about my project and elephant. So elephant is a mega herbivore, and it is also an ecosystem engineer. It is protected animal. It is protected by Nepal government law and also by international law, that is CITES. It is endangered by IUCN Red List. So it is also protected by Nepal and Nepal law. It is also a flagship species. It requires 150 kg, at least 150 kg food per day, and about 150 to 300 kg liter of water for their survival per day. Of course, with a huge body and large huge food requirement, they can travel a long distance, and during for searching of food, mates, and even water. So elephant live in a matriarch family, and it is led by a matriarch, led by a grandma. So grandma can decide when to migrate, when to go for foraging, where to go for foraging, and how long they have to travel, and what strategy they have to be carried out. So it depends on the matriarch, that is the grandma. Even when the family is moving for foraging, if the food is scarce, the family is divided into different clans. Clans is comprised of at least 8 to 27 individuals. So they can divide into different groups, different clans, and then go for foraging. Even they can come back and join together with that population, that family, and revert back to the home places. Even in a single family, there are 2 to 3 defenders. Defenders' role is to help in breeding, but there is also some provision there. The matriarch, which the grandma, can only permit the stronger male who were in must to get a chance to breed with the receptor female. But receptor female has also their own interest, that whoever male is perfect for her, and only she can permit whoever male is strong enough, and they can reproduce. So this is only some elephant ecology part. Why I am saying that? Because elephant has a 14 to 16 weeks stress cycle, but only the recepting day of the female is only 2 to 3 days. So that's why in this time, very much important role is of the female for sustaining their life, sustaining their generations. So most male has also important role to carry out their generation. Even it is also decided by the matriarch grandma, and also required the permission of a receptor female. So this is a small introduction about the elephant. So in the world, there are 2 kinds of elephant. So now I am talking about the Asian elephant. It is from family Elephantidae, And there are also 4 subspecies of this elephant, even Indian elephant, Sumatran elephant, Malaya elephant, and Sri Lankan elephant. Before there was only 3 subspecies recorded, but now there are 4 subspecies. But also there are debate that either there should be 3 or 4. So as per the study, we found that the home range size is also ranging from 15 square kilometer to 5,000 square kilometer. Even some paper there are even Sukumar has written there is the 14,000 square kilometer home range where a bull elephant can roam. But the average home range is for 600 square kilometer, 400 to 600 square kilometer. But it depends on the availability of food and water, and number of and also depending upon the population and the status of the habitat, either that should be the intact, fragmented, or suitable enough. It can travel 40 to 43 kilometers per hour. So while we are talking about the African and Asian elephant, when elephant we are talking, there should be 2 kinds of elephant, that is African and Asian. So there are no doubt African elephant is larger than the Asian elephant. So today I'm going to present about the Asian elephant. Asian elephant is distributed in 13 Asian range countries. Although I have shown here the distribution pattern of African and Asian elephants. So you can see the red one is the current distribution of the Asian elephant, and yellow one is the current distribution of the Asian elephant, African elephant. This is the overall map of 13 countries where 15,000 of animal in wild condition exist, though there are 15,000 of elephant are tamed in captivity in the world. In case of India, there are about 30,000 elephant that is in the wild condition, and which is 60% of the Asian population. India have 60% of the Asian population of elephant. Though our Nepalese elephant is also in the Indian continent, so if we can add, so some 200 to 250 elephant will also be added to this population. Though we have, though Asian elephant have only the limited habitat available, only 65,000 square kilometer habitat is available in India. I will talk later about the how much habitat is available in Nepal. So regarding African elephant population, there are 415,000 elephant are remaining in the wild condition in Africa, though the scientists can predict that by the next by the 2025 this will be decreased by the 160,000, because there were enormous poaching happened. Almost 100 elephants were died due to poaching per day. What happened in case of Nepal? We have 107 to 145 elephants. It is data of 2008. It is by carried out a study by the Pradhan, and even this population is mentioned in the Elephant Conservation Action Plan 2019 and 18. So in that plan, elephant was distributed in 4 isolated population. You can easily see eastern, central, western, and far western population. But the scenario is changed. The population is also increased, which I will show you in a later presentation slide. So before entering into the human-elephant coexistence, I will try my best to acknowledge or introduce you about my PhD study. My PhD study topic is landscape level modeling of Asian elephant habitat, its population, and interaction with people in Nepal. So with this, this is human-elephant coexistence is also a part of my study. I'm going to present here. My objective here is landscape level distribution of elephant in Nepal, landscape level habitat suitability of Asian elephant in Nepal, landscape level human-elephant interaction in Nepal, study the population status of elephant in Nepal, and landscape level home range assessment of Asian elephant in Nepal. So for distribution assessment, I have used this occupancy method. I have divided the area into 15 by 15 square kilometer, this whole Tarai landscape, and river, stream, food trails were taking as a transit, which I have swept for 2 times. So we are using here single species multi-season occupancy method to know where actually the elephant is distributed in current scenario. So this is the methods, single species multi-season occupancy method I have used. And in the previous primary result, we can found that previously there were 4 population, whatever the previous studies were recorded. Now we found, you can see in the lower right map, the elephants are distributed in 2 population, so eastern, western. So you can easily detect there is a connectivity between eastern and western. So we have only 2 population, but we need to verify it by the genetic connectivity. That's why we are also using genetic methods. We have collected then DNA samples to verify it that either genetically it is connected or not. So for landscape level, another objective is landscape level habitat suitability assessment. So for this we have used GIS and remote sensing method by using Google Engine platform. And we have collected the animal presence data from the field. We have collected some presence data from the occupancy survey, and these presence data were used for Maxent modeling, and we came up with the result of that how much habitat is suitable and how much habitat is available in the current scenario. We have used this flow chart that is for habitat fragmentation and habitat suitability. Side by side, we have also calculated habitat fragmentation status. So for calculating habitat fragmentation, we have used the satellite images of 6 different time period. So 1975, 1990, 2000, 2010, and 2020. So by using this 6 time period series data, we have calculated habitat fragmentation, and we also calculated habitat suitability by using Maxent model, and found that 3.25% of the original forest cover was lost from 1930 to 1975, and 17.78% of forest cover was lost from 1975 to 2020. And maximum forest loss occurred in the central region, followed by the eastern and then far western. Regarding forest for fragmentation, it is the highest in the central region, followed by the western region in Nepal. This is a map of habitat fragmentation. You can see 1930, 1975, 1990, 2000, 2010, and 2020 map. And if you can enlarge this map, you can easily see how many patches, how the ease is increasing, how perforated is increased, and how the core area is decreasing in the landscape. So we can easily detect how the habitat of the elephant is fragmented in different time series. Regarding habitat suitability, we also use Maxent model and found that only 12,000 square kilometer area is suitable for elephant, though we have 19,911 square kilometer forest. So it is also degrading condition where the steady area is 42,000. So you can easily see here the condition of the elephant habitat is worsening day by day. Regarding home range study, we have collared 10 elephant up to now with 1 female. but unfortunately only 3 collar is working right now, although we have 7 elephant data. And our plan is to collar at least 12 elephants. So we are planning to collar 4 more elephants with the support for Department of National Park and Wildlife Conservation and National Trust for Nature Conservation. So in the near future, we will collar it, because we have also planning to purchase some collar from the support of department. I think NTNC will do this. And with the available data of these 7 elephants, we have used MCP and kernel density method by using R, and found that Bardia elephant have 385 square kilometer home range. This is with the 3-month data. OC elephant has 289.56 square kilometer home range. That is from 2-year data. Porsa elephant has 290 square kilometer. That is from 3-month data. Chiton elephant has 395 square kilometer. That is 2.5-month data. Similar, if we go for the average, the Nepal elephant has 340.06 square kilometer home range, but is also the average home range that is studied by the previous scientist. These are the some elephants which we have collared, that is Makuna, Dare, including this. So regarding population assessment, we have used both direct count method by surveying in the transect survey and waterholes count. We also use non-invasive genetic sampling method. So by using direct count method, we have counted all the heads in the 3 different consecutive years, in 2017, 18, and 19. And for non-invasive genetic sampling method, we have collected fresh DNA, fresh dung sample from visiting back of the herd, and collected more than 800 samples, fresh sample. And these samples are extracted here, DNA are extracted here in National Trust for Nature Conservation Lab. And this is under the process of PCR and doing sequencing and using this non-invasive genetic sampling for calculating population by non-invasive genetic mark and recapture method. So whatever we find in the elephant status, whatever we counted during 17, 18, and 19, we have also counted some elephant in 2016, but only included some 17, 18, and 19 3-year data. We can found 227 individual elephants are there in Nepal, which is isolated, which is found in the different location. So it is not only restricted inside the protected area. The majority of elephants are residing outside of the protected area. So this is also a challenge for Nepalese conservation. So we also have to think about this. So you can easily see in 1990, IUCN has studied, and they can find that 57 to 85 elephants. Similarly, Smith and Mishra has studied, carried out one study on elephant. They found 52 to 53 elephants. In 1997, 82 elephants were recorded by Ten Belte. Similarly, in 2009, Department of National Park and Wildlife Conservation has prepared an elephant conservation plan, action plan, and there should be included 107 to 145 elephants. That was also a part of Dr. Narendra Pradhan study, because genetic study was carried out in Bardia National Park, and that population was also included on this. And in this study, although this is yet to be verified by the genetic method, and we have counted 227 animal hair. In this study, Haribhadra Acharya, ecologist, is also involved in this study for counting this animal. So regarding human-elephant interaction, this is my last objective. I will try my best to define about the conflict and coexistence. So simply, conflict is a negative interaction between human and elephant, and coexistence is living together with human and elephant. So simple way I want to describe here. So if you can see the upper photographs, you can easily see when any people went inside the forest, what she perceive, what they think. Wow, peace! It is very nice. It's beautiful. It is amazing. It is historic. But when an elephant enters into the human territory, you can easily see, find what people perceive and how people react, respond. Oh no, it is horrific. It is a terror. It is a conflict. Similarly, we are residing in a developing country. We are not even against the development work, but when a development worker enter inside the forest, or when they plan to work even railways line, highway transmission line, even irrigation channel, if new to construct, even in a kind of airport, even they plan to construct, they want to construct these things in a easy way, in a easy place, and they can choose a forest. You can see in the photographs how they can try to cut the forest. So they can easily choose the forest and want to develop or construct this development work. Though we have the provision of EIA, IE, but their first and foremost selection is in the forest. So this is also a threat for elephant. What animal perceive? What are they? The people and animal both are getting stressed. So if people can see any animal, they think that we are very in stress, and when animal see the people, because they are residing in their own way, they also very stressful. So very difficult here, and this is the due to this elephant coming together and conflict happen. You can see here how people and elephant interacted. So people are trying to chase elephant, even that is in the inside the forest, but they are trying to chase. And what happened, you can easily see in the picture. So this is the scenario of the conflict. And finally, people can behave like this, make elephant so much aggressive. And so to study this human elephant interaction, we have carried out household survey, and we have covered all the areas having highest human elephant conflict. We covered all the cases of human death and visited house to house where the death case happened. And in case of property and injury, and in case of crop damage, we have taken first household survey as a random sample, and then in every 10th household we have carried out the survey. What we found? I can find this kind of scenario in the field. You can see the red one. Where is this red one? This is eastern part. This is Jhapa in right. This is Kosi. This one is Chitan Parsa complex, and in the west, Bardia, and this one is the Shukla Phata. So the red one has the very high conflict. Means in case of Bardia and Jhapa and central Nepal, large number of people were dead due to elephants. If we go to the number of people attacked or dead due to elephant, we can easily see in Jhapa 37 people were dead due to elephant attack in last 15 years. And similarly, in case of Bardia, 35 people were dead due to elephant attack. But this is not enormous. If you can go outside the protected area, you can see even in Chiton, only 20 people were dead. But if you see Chiton, Parsa, Makwanpur, and Bara, which is one complex, then the number of deaths is really, really enormous. Beside this protected area, if you go outside, go beyond the protected area, lots of people, even in Saptari, Sunsari, Siraha, Saptari district, Siraha, Udaipur, Dhansa, Sundali, Sarlai, and Rothhat, lots of people were died due to human-elephant conflict. So it is too much tragic for Nepal. Though in case of the international scenario in India, 465 people were got dead last year. So this is the Indian scenario. If you can see, in the last 5 years in India, 2,361 people were died due to elephant attack. Similarly, in case of Africa, what happened? If we think what is happening with African elephant, then 100 elephants per day were poaching. And similarly, 60 to 75 elephants were died due to poaching and retaliation, even in electrocution in India. In case of Nepal, 23 elephants were got retaliated, and in recent year, in last 3-4 years, 4 elephants were injured, found killed. So now poaching is also might be getting momentum. I'm not sure, and I can't say that might be the poaching, but the bulleting is started. So there are many elephants residing outside the protected area boundary, and many elephants, which is must or male or sub-adult male group, they were injured by the local people. The severe gunshot is experienced, and 2-3 elephants were also losing their eyes in case of Zappa. So what are the factors responsible for human-elephant conflict? If you go to the quick, so it depends how government authority can respond. Either it is quick or not. If quick, then it will be getting lesser, and it also depends on the site base. If it is near the protected area or outside the protected area, if it is the protected area, then it is responded very quickly, and conflict is higher, but the human support is there. But in case of outside the protected area, in case of Zappa, in case of even Sinduli, in case of even Sarlahi, people were so much aggressive with the elephant. So the condition of elephant is very much tragic outside the protected area. We have 8 bull elephants, which is wandering hither and thither, that were severely injured. And from these 8, 2 have loosened their eyes, and 2 died due to severe injury. It also depends on the human behavior, how people can respond. In case of protected area and Paportan community responds very positively, but in somewhere in the middle, for example, in Saptari, in case of Siraha, people are all worshipping the elephant, and they can hardly accept that God had come and just killed. So they can take, they took easily. But in case of Zappa, in case of Sarlai, Sinduli, they can really very much negative to elephant. So regarding human activities, herding, propagating, and sleeping, chasing. So chasing elephant is too much dangerous for people. Lots of people were got dead. Among 197 people dead due to elephant attack, 60% people were died during chasing the elephant. So it is very much serious. It also this conflict also depends upon their elephant types and condition. Either that should be in the herd, clan, or that should be in loners or sub-adult group, or that is teenagers. Actually, in case of elephants, teenage starts from 7 to and end by 20. So between 7 to 20, these elephants are really very aggressive one. Also depends depending on the proximity to forest and settlement, how far is from forest, or how near from the proto area, it depends. And type of crop, whatever we are farming, either that should be paddy, maize, or sugarcane, can lure the animal. So if that should be either mighty roots, that might be a place where human-elephant conflict arises. In case of Nepal, elephants are traveling through the Shivalik foothills and also from the transboundary. There are some 100 to 150 elephants that is migrated from transborder, either in case of Eastern Nepal or in case of Western Nepal. Finally, some biological corridors and bottlenecks. If there are biological corridor or bottlenecks, there might be some possibility of attack, and these are the factors that can lead human-elephant conflict and may lead to the death and other conflicts. So what should be the impact of the conflict? We can find two kinds of impact, and that should be direct or indirect. Direct impact is seen, that is also seen impact human death, injury, property, and crop loss. But indirect impact, that is health, wealth, and property loss, mental health, opportunity, and transaction cost is not visible. It is also a hidden cost. So whatever we can find in our study, there are 30% of the widows who have the mental problem, mental disorder, and their kids are, nobody is caring their kids. So very difficult for them to handle those kids. So very difficult here. So we have also to hit this indirect impact, which is hidden one, mental. And some people have also told us that they have also lost the opportunity cost, and they also required some transaction cost in some places because they didn't get the whole amount, even compensation amount from that authority. That is happen in case of some forest area, whatever we can. So what next? So now only the thing is that is living together, that is coexistence. So now it is our time to make the room for the elephant. So what should we do? What government did up to now? So if you can see, these are some best practices that is adopted by the government of Nepal. This is really, really very good, very fantastic. And lots of money were also expended by government of Nepal, even in case of Department of National Park. And they have planned immediate measure, intermediate measure, and even some measures that is also for long term carried out for the mitigating human-elephant conflict and moving towards the coexistence. So these are some programs which is carried out by the government. Government has also facilitated to carry out the traditional method that is already carried out by the local people: fencing, noise making, drum beating, using firecracker like smoke, and many others. And government has supported for constructing solar fence, electric fence, mesh wire fence, and other. For deterrent, and they have constructed view tower, sirens, and geofence. They have planned for this caller also using for real-time monitoring. We are also constructing, this government is also doing some conservation awareness activities. We are also part of government, and the conservation radio program also, jingles are regularly, this radio program is also regularly carried out by the local FM radio. We also using social coherence management, forming widow network, providing monthly allowance to single woman. This is the practice of Bardia National Park, and also provide some scholarship to the school kids, scholarship granted to the victim children. It is just started, and some immediate compensation and relief is also provided for the victims. About 1 million Nepali currency is provided for if any death case happen, and for injury, government has provided whole the expense from the government hospital. In a special case, in case of Mari municipality in Chiton, they have started the new method. We are thankful to Mari municipality because they have provided in our Nepali currency 500,000 to victims who lost their cousins, and in case of property loss, they also provide the whole amount that is provided by the park. Similarly, in case of insurance, Ratnagar municipality in Chittagong has started the insurance mechanism in Bodhrani. 75% premium was provided by the municipality, and even by the Mirigkunj user committee, Bagmarasiya, and only local people is responsible for 25%. This is very good starting from the community. And even National Trust for Nature Conservation has also started some cooperative-based community insurance in Thuri. So totally, what we have find, Nepal government has expended 437.5 million currency during last 5 years, Nepali currency during last 5 years for managing human wildlife conflict in Nepal. And they have provided Nepali currency 165 million for which is for the relief, and about among these 165.9 million, 60% is provided for human elephant conflict mitigation and victims. So these are some programs what is carried out by the government. These signage were also provided in the strategic locations. So even there are some gaps because we have started our Chure program, Chure Conservation Initiative, Chure Conservation Program with the Chure management. We have master plan, but there are some lacking, some encroachment happening there. So we need to conserve that Chure as a upstream downstream linkage. So we need some important and a special focus there because we need some habitat improvement, some water holes, recharge pond we need to construct in this Chure region because Chure is also lifeline of this wildlife. Lots of life, different kind of, large kind of biodiversity and even rare and endangered species are residing here. And also development activities is undergoing, but we have lacking some policy that we are unable to convince them to make some passes, and we are unable to give them mandate to construct those things by taking all the EIA provisions and whatever mitigation measure that if that should be adopted, it will be better for Nepal. Even in case of Nijgar International Airport is also there. So road accident is also prominent in case of Chittagong and Parsa. Even in case of KTWR, wild buffalo is also got accident there. So we also lacking some mechanism that should be mentoring relief amount because we have provided large sum of amount to people. So what that where that amount is going, so there is no any proper mechanism to do monitoring that. So what should we go for further for doing coexistence with human? So first and foremost, we have to change our human behavior because now we need to change the human behavior because whenever any elephant group came into the territory, all the people come forward, come near the elephant and just chasing, eating the elephant. So this is very, very uncommon behavior of human, and that's why elephant get aggressive and the attack happen and lots of people lose their life. So we also need some immediate response for removing animal from the settlements. This is the common phenomenon. This is only happen near and territory of park because park is park was sending immediately the even Nepal Army protection staff, but it is difficult to send or organize this thing, coordinate this thing in case of outside the protected area. So we need to coordinate and do the immediate response. We need also human-elephant conflict strategy not only case of elephant, we need human wildlife conflict mitigation strategy in case of all the animals. So that can reduce the cost and can go ahead for the betterment. So we also need to reduce some expenses regarding the constructing barrier, because large sum of money we are expending on constructing these barriers, even solar fence, concrete fence, but these all are not doing well. So this is this is bit bitter speaking, that it's not really doing nice. So now the time is to change this method, this money, to the people who are residing nearby the edge of the forest. And if we can provide that monetary value, and if we can change their thatch house into the concrete one, then people will also be happy and they will be safe. So we have to save the people's life, and that will be better for us. So we have to now change our working pattern also. We need to provide immediate compensation, but there should be also lacking. Though National Park and Wildlife Department is providing very fast, but although people are also not happy with this, and they are trying their best to get this money from their own local municipality and local government. So we have to change this, and we have to provide this money from the local government. It will be better. Now, the time to change the livelihood pattern of poor and marginal people who is too much vulnerable and residing nearby the forest boundary, because these people are very much poor. If we can speak about the people who are residing in the Chure, though they are though they are though they are lacking the lands, they don't have, many of them didn't have their own land. They are residing in the government property inside the forest, inside the edge of the forest, in the Chure. And these people is so much yes, affected by that, because they are also preparing some local homemade drink, and elephant is also fond of this drink. Why? Because elephant is lacking water in the Chure Bhavar. While they are moving east to west, they don't get water, and when they reach to the home, they can just get the scent of this alcohol, which is very lurable to them, and they come and just pick that drink and just also damage their house and property. So this is very, very serious in case of Chure and Shivalik, where this elephant travel. So we need to provide monetary support to the vulnerable people who and change their hazard. I have already told. And we also need to promote some alternative cropping, and we also have to prepare a strategy regarding human wildlife conflict mitigation, and we need to do mandatory provision in constructing overpass and underpass while constructing this linear infrastructure in case of canals, transmission line, even highway, railway, and even this development worker, in case of the highway, they don't want to even increase their height. So if they can increase the height of the bridge in the highway, they can also use it as an overpass. So we need, yes, underpass. We need to implement this IE and EIA strictly. We have to promote some banana, jackfruit, bamboo, and mango at the edge of the forest. So it is why I am telling this, because we have to stop the elephant at least 1 hour in the edge of the forest. Because if they don't get this bamboo, banana in the edge, if they get, then they can even stop for 1.5 hours. Half hour, 1 hour, and 1.5 hours. Then only they can move towards the village. So we can reduce the damage, frequency of damage. So we need to, finally, we need to initiate or develop integrated settlement strategy, settlement program, rather spread one in settlement in the scattered way. This is also a program of government, but need to be implemented. If this will be implemented in the elephant habitat, I think 60% the conflict will be resolved. So these are some photographs of elephant when we captured for the coloring. And in the monitoring, we can find that these loners, these problem animal, are also joining the groups. Not we also need to, so we also need to engage media in conservation. So we also give the information to public by the media. Media is playing the important role. So we don't have to, we have to engage media to mitigate the conflict, and this will play a better important role to prepare an environment for human-elephant coexistence. So this is all from my side. Thank you very much, and I would like to welcome your suggestion and queries, and I will try my best to answer your question as per my knowledge. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashok sir, for your extremely informative presentation. We have plenty of well wishes coming from the audience and many questions regarding your presentation as well. So without losing any time, I'd like to get on to the Q&A session then. We have a question asking, are there any past records of wild elephants occurring in the Mahabharat range as well of Nepal?
Thank you very much for your nice question. Elephant, we have found up to 1100 meter, and we didn't find any elephant presence in the Mahabharat range.
Okay, another one is, since genetic connectivity is yet to come, do you anticipate one subpopulation or two subpopulation in Nepal based on your field experience?
Yeah, as per my, thank you very much. This is a very nice question. So whatever we carried out in the field, we have traveled east to west on the foot, sometime in the vehicle. And whatever we can find that each and every animal presence location were taken. And we find the continuous presence of animal from in eastern Nepal, from Jhapa to Chiton complex. Even from in the end of the Chiton National Park, that is the presence in the Valmiki Ashram, there is a presence of elephant. So for this experience, with this field visit, we came into conclusion that there is the connectivity between eastern and central population. That's why I am saying there is a eastern population, that is the one population. In case of the western population, what we can find, the western elephant from the Kanchanpur, that is from the Suklapata Wildlife Reserve, that is come to Bardia from Dudhwa, Katarnia Ghat, and Khata, then visited to Bardia National Park. And then move towards the east, they can travel up to Baki and Dan, and by using the Kamdi corridor, they can travel to Sohagi Varva Wildlife Sanctuary, that is in India. And by crossing the Sohagi Varva, they all again enter into the Nepal, that is Kapilvastu, Gugoli VDC. So that is in the Nepal. So up to Kapilvastu, there is the presence of animal, that is the wild elephant. So we can easily say there is, and after that, after Gugoli, means in case of Kapilvastu, there is no any presence of elephant up to Navalprasi, means West Navalprasi. In Navalpur, there is a presence of any elephant, but in Western Navalprasi, there is not any presence of elephant is there. So we predict that there should be two populations, that should be Eastern and Western. And why I'm not confirming here this, because it needs to verify. So that's why we are going to the genetic connectivity. That's why we have collected some samples from East and West, so that we have to see either these animals are very related, very near, from the very near family, or very far, and or how far is they are from the two clans or two families. So if we get the results, then we certainly come in close conclusion that either we have genetically connected two population or only one population. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Relating to the genetic question, we have another question asking, what results do you anticipate from genetic study, especially in distinguishing between wild and domestic elephants?
Yeah, genetically, if we go through the wild and domestic, they are very near. They are from the because as we know, Nepal is also famous for capturing, I think, wild elephant. They even in ancient days, even Rana, even our kings were also fond of capturing this animal, because we have some places also here. And only the way of some income source is that is elephant capturing and selling. So we have also, still we have some elephants that is from the wild. So it is very near, I think. And I don't have going through the genetic analysis for this, but whatever I studied, they are very interrelated, and they are very near in their family.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We have another question that was based on the incident of Kerala, where the elephants were attacked with the firecrackers. And it's been asking, are there any laws in Nepal to address such issues?
Yeah, we have also, we have a strong act, that is National Park and Wildlife Conservation Act. And regarding Kerala case, there was also some laws, but they are a bit flexible on that. But in case of Nepal, there are no any flexibility in case of act and regulations. So if anybody found doing this kind of offenses, they might be punished. So there are no any excuse in our government law. Thank you.
Okay. We have another question on any data on the death and specific reasons for the elephant deaths.
In case of Nepal, what we can find in during last 15 years, so Jhapa and Bardia has large amount of people who are getting died due to the elephant attack. And in case of some areas which is outside the protected area, for example, Saptari, Shira, even Sindhuli, Sarlai, that's not near the protected area, even far from protected area. So they also have experiencing some death and human-elephant conflict. Means elephant is regularly traveling to this area, and that's why the eastern elephant is joining in the central. So what we can find in our study, we follow the elephant, not herd, we follow the loner one, that is an sub-adult male group, and we find that the two animals were joining from Jhapa to our central population, that is Chidan-Parsa complex. So we can easily say that these loners are involving in human-elephant conflict also, because they are very much angry and serious, because whenever they can moving towards forwards or backward, they have to interact with the human. When they can find some food, they can certainly go to the houses, and they can certainly raid the crops, and they do harm by the bullets and harm by the spears. So this is the condition and of this human-elephant conflict.
So another question is, what were the attributes and variables used for collecting human perception towards elephant in your study?
So in my study regarding conflict study, so it depends what kind of your objective is. So human-elephant conflict study itself is a very, very big issue. So what I have chosen for my study, that is how the variables that I have used for modeling, that is activities, human education, even their occupations, their activity engaged, and what time they can found the elephant in their own territory. So like this. So if anybody is interested to know about these variables, so please give my email to her or him, and just I will send him my data set, if a questionnaire, if she requires it or he required.
Thank you, sir. So we have another question asking about the preference of the elephants going inside the buffer zone area. And do you think it is because of the food availability or change in their behavior? Or is there any other reason that they're entering the buffer zone areas?
Thank you very much, Aditi, and thank you very much for this nice question. Actually, elephant, for this we have to know about the elephant ecology, because elephants are living in a family, and I have also previously told about the teenagers, because teenagers are from 7 years to 20 years, and these teenagers were removed from the group. Why they are removed? Because they do some, they are not in, they are just like a ragu. So the family, like a teenager boy, if boy or girl in our case, we are not doing good. So family and our guardian says, yes, you are not doing well, so you have to be punished. So like the same thing happening with the elephant. So the grandma can just remove that elephant if they are ragu or do the wrong behavior there, wrong response there. So that's why they are just going outside, and they can prepare join another group, because there are already some animals that were already removed from the group. The males, especially in case of males, they were already removed from the group. Either they were defender, because if they were replaced by the stronger male during the breeding, if then they also form some small group of males, and these males are very much furious, very much angry, and very much dangerous to the people. And these animal can travel long distance in case of Nepal. Even in case of migratory elephants, some herds also traveling, but these animal are traveling long distances in Nepal. And these animals are dangerous and also go outside of the forest area, road area boundary, and even in the buffer zone. In case of this question, we have 4 elephants here in Chiton National Park. That is Ronaldo, Durbe, Govinde, even Ganesh, and another newcomer is also coming from the eastern Nepal. And they are doing lots of damage here, and each day we are going for removing these elephants from the settlements. Now our patrolling team is moving to chase those animals from the settlement. So very dangerous. So why they are going? Because they can find nice fragrance and good food also, but they get good food because they don't find the paddy, even maize inside the forest, and they need new taste. Even if they can go outside, they can also get some new thing. For example, alcohol also, sometimes they get homemade alcohol, and they are also fond of homemade alcohol. So they are going outside for taking new food, and sometimes they are moving for searching of mates also. So that's why mates, in the sense that might be female also, or that might be their adult, sub-adult male group also. So that's why they are going outside. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That was very interesting. So addressing the elephant in the room, we have had many issues, upcoming issues regarding the Nizhgard airport, and we have many questions that are asking about the concern about the project that's happening right now, and how the project will impact the elephants corridor, and how is there anything that is being mitigated, or how can we save the elephants corridor? The government, how can the government and the community work together? Is there anything going on right now? So there are lots of questions being asked, and I think, sir, you might be the best person to address these questions at the moment.
Thank you, Aditi. Thank you, my dear audience and sir. It is really a nice question, and this is also a burning issue right now in case of Nepal, because Nizhgard International Airport is a priority first program, priority first project of Nepal. I'm not against the Nizhgard airport construction work, and I also need this airport. I'm favor of this project. But whatever our askings, our audience ask about this project, actually that is this Nizhgard airport is connected with the Parsa National Park. So, and this is the way where elephant is also using that area. and moving towards the east via Kolbi, and they can join the forest of the Rohtang area, and they can travel towards the east up to Bagmati. And some loners also can travel towards the east. So there is that is also that is in the corridor, but it can be mitigated. The impact can be mitigated by constructing this airport, because there is a place. If we can leave some areas, some passage for elephant to pass towards the east, then we can easily construct the airport. And we also will be in favor of both Nisgarens International Airport and this animal also. That's why there is the only way that we have to leave some area as a passage, as a corridor, to let them go east-west. So this is only the way, and I think government is thinking about this, and government will certainly do this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir, for that positive note. I have a last question, and we all know that there has been a lot of lags in the field work because of the COVID pandemic crisis. But do you have any idea on the average or total population count of the elephant in 2020?
Yeah, I have presented in my slide. I think you can see on the slide there is a 227 individual elephant were recorded. And how we can record this? Because we have carried out 3 times 3 year in direct count data we have counted each and every individual. We have taken all the photographs of those elephants. We have captured all the videos of that animals, and then we can analyze the photographs, and finally came into conclusion that this much elephant is we have. So we have 227 elephants, which is seen during the field visit, and that's why we have written there in the also slides. So, and I have also presented whatever in the previous time, what was the population status in 1990, that was 50 to 60, and now we have 227. So 1990 and this is 220, means in the 30-year span we have lots of elephant now. So there were very less event of conflict were recorded. Now we have chunk of large amount of conflict recorded. So this is the condition. So the number of elephant is also increasing, conflict is also increasing. So this is the time now to think about both human and elephant. So we have to also conserve, protect elephant or wildlife, and we have also need to work in favor of human. That's why we need to prepare an environment of human-elephant coexistence. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. That was the end of our Q&A session. I'm afraid for the time we need to keep intact. And thank you, Ashok sir, for answering all the questions. I'd like to also thank our audiences for the participation through your interesting questions. We've almost come to the end of the program. So before we finish, may I please ask Ashok Ram sir to give any final remarks?
Thank you very much, respected sir, my senior, my guru, my friends, audience. Thank you very much for listening me, my ideas, and giving me feedback in my PhD study, PhD work. And I am very much thankful to my Department of National Park and Wildlife Conservation, and my Director General, Ecologist. And I am also thankful to the Project Area Manager from the Lowland Tarai, from Kosi to Kosi to Shuklabhata, and also thankful to Chief Warden of Porsa National Park and Chiton National Park and Bardia National Park. And finally, without the support of funding support of ZSL, Rafford Small Grant, even International Elephant Foundation, WWF, NTNC. It won't be possible for me that I have completed my study. So that's why I am thankful to this institution. And last but not least, Dr. Hem has pioneering me to start my PhD. So I am very much thankful to him, and Dr. and Mohan Bahadur Kharka, my previous Director General. I am also very much thankful to him. Finally, thankful to you, Himalayan team, Himalayan Nature team, Dr. Tulsi. I didn't see somewhere Karan sir. I am also thankful to Karan sir and these all audiences, my guru, my supervisors. This is all from my side. I am trying my best to answer this question wherever any slagging there. I am available. My phone number is 9852054105. If anybody is interested, please call me and I will try my best to answer, even if this presentation will be last. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for being so supportive and open to the questions. I'm sure you will get the copy of the questions that we couldn't address today, and you can write to them via your email as well. So thank you for joining us and sharing your wonderful insights on human-elephant coexistence. And thank you again to our audience for joining into the conversation of conserving elephants through the Nature Speaks series. I'd like to remind you all once again that this session was recorded and will be available on Himalayan Nature's YouTube channel and Facebook page, along with many other previous episodes as well, so you can view them in your convenience. We will be back with yet another interesting topic next week, so please do follow the Himalayan Nature's page to find out more about it. And with that, on behalf of the team, I'd like once again to thank Ashok Ram sir, along with our audience, and wish everybody a good evening and namaste.